Hey guys, how are you doing today? Michael here. I will have a secret guest today, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun here. Okay, I'll still gonna give 2 or 3 minutes before we jump into the discussion to introduce my guest first, while everyone is still joining us. Okay, so basically, my guest today is this little boy here. His name is Hugo. We're gonna be co-hosting this today with him. He's our company mascot. Hey Hugo. We're going to be talking about closing outbound deals. This guy knows how to close for sure. I know. I saw his KPI for the quarter with closed deals, with his cute face. Okay, but if actually if you want seriously, Hugo will be co-hosting with me, but we're going to have another guest, and I'm just pinging the guest to join us here. Senior sales exec Brian Hicks here. Hey Brian, how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me, everybody. My name is Brian Hicks. I'm the senior sales exec over at Belkins, coming to you with I don't know, I'd say about 15 years of sales experience. Like many of you, I cut my teeth on 200 dials a day doing SDR prospecting work. And if anybody understands the value in landing that meeting, but then more so the value in converting that meeting, I would put my name at the top of the list. And so I'm really excited about this. And I'm excited about the best practices that we're going to dive into in terms of uncovering what we can do differently than all of the other SCs that might be out there and all the other people that might be trying to close, what we can do differently to bring our outbound conversions up and to talk about why they're valuable for business expansion.
Yeah. You know, me and Brian, we've decided to throw this webinar because really one of the questions that we are asked a lot of time is how can I increase my conversion to close more outbound leads? Because really, you know, outbound closing is pain in the ass for a lot of SCs, right? And I think that Brian and I can uncover this topic. You know, we've done probably over 5,000 appointments from this channel over the last 5, 10, 12 years. You know, Brian done that for 15 years now. So for the next hour, we're going to be talking about this and really sharing some insights and things that we've learned that might help you guys to be more successful with your sales. All right. So let's just go into the agenda for this. We're really going to be talking about 5 topics. So we're going to talk about the difference between different channels of lead generation, because really many folks that I've talked to, they just don't have idea that actually leads from the referral, inbound, and outbound channels should be processed differently. So you cannot have one sales process for all the leads from all of these channels, because you would be surprised, but things are all very different across the board, right? We're going to talk about the advantages of outbound sales, and then we're going to talk about, I will bring up sort of like a sequence or a cadence of a successful outbound cadence that you can utilize. And although probably the cadence can be different case by case, but really you're going to see a pattern of and you can kind of utilize something like this for some of your sales processes, right? And then we're going to go through common mistakes that sales executives make, right? And then we're going to share some really nice effective outbound sales strategies that drive sales. All right. So basically we will talk for 45 minutes. We're going to obviously try to, we're going to try to make sure that we're going to put as much useful and actionable content in this 45 minutes. And then I was thinking that we're going to leave 15 minutes to answer your questions. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will make sure that at the end, we're going to answer all those questions for you guys. All right. So while you think of something when me and Brian are talking, just go ahead and type that in the chat. And then we're going to go back at the end and we're going to spend 15 minutes answering those questions for you guys. Okay. And then we're recording this. So there will be a recording after this. So if someone wants to take notes, go ahead and take notes. If you really don't want to take notes right now, no worries. We're going to record this and then send you the recording in the next day or so. All right. So going into that first topic, right? What is the difference between leads from referral, inbound, and an outbound channel, right? Really, the only difference that, or there are some differences, obviously, right? But some of them that you see here in this sort of like slide, right, is that really the touch points are totally off with comparing to referral and outbound channel, right? And here's what I mean. When you have someone from your network or someone that you've someone that you know or someone that you've worked with before, right? Or someone that came from that network, like a lead or prospect or whatever. So you can imagine that it just really takes one message or a call or an appointment to get to a proposal, because you already have a trust, right? You already have a positive feedback from the experience that that person had, or sort of like that the client, the part of yours or the person that person worked with gave about you, or so on and so forth, right? So really, it's not gonna take you for ages, or you don't need to really push hard to close the deal, right? And again, by the way, I'm talking case by case here, but just, if I generalize, then it's really going to take one or two touches to actually convert that lead into the closed deal or sale, right? When we think of the inbound leads that came from content that registered on the website, social, advertising, really prospects that already have buying intent, that already have something that they are looking for, and they already have a budget in place. The person that looks for this is really the right decision maker because that person is appointed, right? Then when they come to you, then obviously they're looking for a deal, right? So you give them the deal, you sort of like talk shop about what you can do for them, right? And then you just send that proposal, answer the question, and if that proposal is interesting, then you can have a deal, right? So it really takes you those extra 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to actually close that inbound leads, right? But when you think about the outbound, and you really need to think about this, the nature of the outbound, and by the way, I'm not going into the vocabulary here in terms of like what the outbound is, right? Because I think that everyone who is on this webinar is familiar with the concept, right? So we're going to be just talking about sort of like for advanced users here, right? So we're not going to be talking basics. It's going to be like an advanced webinar for today, okay? So when we think of the outbound, you basically have a prospect that might be a good fit for you, for sure, because you know their industry, you know their size, you know that the person you're talking to is the right decision maker based on their title, right? But you really don't know whether they have a need right now, whether they have a budget right now, whether they have an intent right now, right? But you think that based on the criteria for your ideal customer, that might be a good fit, right? So what you do, you knock the door, you put your foot in the door, right? And you really start wanting to make a sale, right? So if that is the case, that buyer, that person didn't expect you coming in with the offer, right? So you really need to try your best to convert them, right? Because they didn't expect this. So, and because of that, it's gonna take you those extra steps to be able to sort of like convert that lead, right? And because of this, visually, if you see a slide here, then it's really going to take 2 or 3 times more than inbound, or 5 to 6 times more than from the referral, in terms of number of sales touches that you need to make, and number of efforts that you need to make to actually convert that sale, right? And we put here a few actual examples. So as I said, referral closing time is 1 month typically, right? Inbound is comparable to 2-3 months, and the outbound is around 6 months, right? Number of touches, right? If the referral is 2-4 touches, right? Inbound is 5-8 sales touches, then the outbound can go up to 10 to 20 sales touches, right? Which is like significantly more than you would say for this. Sorry, let me just put this thing here. Oh, here you go. All right. Yeah, and then, the sales approach. You can imagine that the sales approach for those 2 channels is also completely different. So for example, when we think of the referral, right, as I said, it's more simpler, it's more elegant, right? You already have positive feedback from someone that know how you do business, right? So it's a straightforward deal, right? With the inbound, it's a template-based sales, right? So you would say that there is a person that has an intent, they're looking for the deal, you gave them a nice quote. The process, it takes a few months or whatever, but then the number of touches is also less than with other channels like outbound, right? But with the outbound, if you really want to be good with this, right, you need to have a personalized follow-up experience. You need to be, and we're going to talk in a second or with other slides about this, right? But what we mean here by the personalized follow-up experience is that whenever you have a meeting with a client, you really cannot just send a generic follow-up with the info. Hey, thanks for the call. Here is the information that you were looking for, my deck. Let me know what you think and what the next steps are, right? You cannot close outbound deal with this kind of follow-up. You really need to take notes during the call about what the needs are, what the pain points are. What is that client share with you that you can utilize to be able to then follow up with that client, right, or future client with relevant information, right? So when you send a follow-up, you really need to personalize that and to make sure that client feels that he or she is special, right? And then aggressive guarantee-based sales model, and this is like a second point here. What we mean here by the aggressive guarantee-based sales model is that very often we've seen that many organizations, they don't convert a lot of outbound calls because they have their value proposition needs refreshing, or they need to go to a whiteboard and work on their value prop and sort of like repackaging their services or repackaging their products, right? Because maybe they're not that competitive. And very often the customers that are successful we work with, they have a guarantee or a measurable deliverables behind them. So what I mean by that is that whenever you sell a product or a service, you always need to give numbers in terms of how much money I can save to my client, right? Or how much money they can make with that product or that service, or how much time they can save, or so on and so forth, right? And that can be measurable and that can be estimated and guaranteed, right? So whenever a customer starts with you or you want to make a sale, they would know that if we invest this many dollars, this is how much, what is the ROI that I can expect from this, right? So if you have a more vague, sort of like more general value prop, then maybe outbound is not the best channel for you, just because then you wouldn't be able to explain the ROI for that client within a pitch, demo pitch time, or just generally in the follow-ups, and it really make the difference for them to want to change their current vendor, right? Because very often when you approach someone with outbound, they will say, well, I already have something in place, right? So you really need to be very compelling with regards to your offer for them to be able to say, hey, you know what? Michael is actually right. Maybe we should be changing this, or maybe we should be looking at this more, right? And then also the last one is foot in the door offer. And I think that I kind of, I'll have Brian take in this one because I know that we've talked across the board about this one with him earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really important to have an idea, have something kind of pre-packaged that gives them a low risk entry level point with higher possible return on investment. And so having something that's already kind of pre-planned up in your solution portfolio or your product portfolio that is maybe even a pre-packaged offering where you can present to them the main points of where your value, a lot of folks that we work with and that are probably on this call have several different items or products within their offering that they can pitch. But having kind of a sampling slice of that pie that gives them your best offering, but just in a lower entry point that allows them to de-risk and to feel more comfortable about them entering into a partnership with you, gives you the opportunity to potentially land and then expand. So they're not looking at this like an elephant that they have to eat. They're looking at this like a small plate of food that they can consume, and then they can expand from there. So based on your ability to deliver, put together something that's value add, that definitely will solve their problems, that if you were to do a proof of concept or if you were to do a pilot with them, that you can prove your model and your value over a shorter period of time with a smaller investment. So then you can prove the value within the business and the relationship. You can expand it from that point.
Yeah. And as an example, for right, when you have a product, you offer a free trial, right? Or you offer, like we've done in Belkins, so like offering 20 leads for free, right? It's not that, it's not just that, yeah, we do put investment in front of this because there's some resources and people involved into providing those leads, but we really wanted to show or create value for the client first, right? So that to pique their interest and also to get some to get some value and some results from this so that they would know that we can scale that up afterwards, right? And this investment shows us that if we were to have, so our conversion between an appointment to a close, for example, might be on average, let's say 15% from the outbound channel, right? With the free trial, it could go up to 25%, right? So that just increase your conversion with that sort of like offering. So at the end of the day, because you with this, you do spend your money and time on that foot in the door offer, but at the end of the day, because this would increase the conversion, then your acquisition will be lower. And so because of this, you would still spend less money acquiring clients. So that's going to justify the investment that you've spent on creating that foot in the door offer, right? So moving on here, the advantages of the outbound sales, right? And really, there are more than this. Here, we just put 7 that are really stand out among all others, right? We're going to talk a lot about the predictability here. And the reason why is that outbound is one of the most predictable channels, because outbound is all about the effort, right? Is that how many dials I make, how many emails I send, how many messages I hit the inbox with, right? Really, and then if you track your conversions across the board, you can always know how much additional effort I need to create to be able to close this many clients or generate this many appointments, right? So that's why, and then this is how much money I would spend on this, right? So as a quick example, right? I have 100 contacts in my database. I've sent 500 emails. I converted 5 appointments. I talked to those 5. I closed 1 deal, and I made this much revenue, right? So it means that I would calculate how much money I spent on booking those 5 appointments, and then how much money I spent on SC to be able to close that. So that my budget will be, let's say, $5,000, right? And I made like $25,000. So this is my ROI. So then I would know, okay, if I'm going to make 50 grand or $100,000, then I would need to increase my sales budget by 4 by 4 times, right? To be able, so that I spend 25,000 and I'm generating $100,000. Very straightforward. And really the key goal here is to be able to invest enough time and enough resources to know all of these metrics, know all of these numbers, and just scale those numbers as you go, right? So predictability is a key here, and that's worth an investment, right? Another point here, predictable ideal customer profile. And what we mean by this is that when you invest into your inbound or whenever you work with your network, right, you really want to look through the network and say, hey, who could be a good client for me here, right? Did I talk to this guy? Did I talk to that guy, right? With the ideal customer profile in mind and with the predictable outbound channel, right, you can always make a research and you can identify how many businesses are out there, right, that might be a good fit for me. And then if I talk to at least 35% of them or 50% of them, how many I can convert into my clients, and then how much money I can generate, right? So by understanding your total addressable market or your TAM, and then analyzing that, and then really working with that market and always keeping in mind your ideal customer profile, you can really be focused in terms of what kind of deals I close, right? Because if I know that my ideal customer profiles are enterprise grade tech companies that make over like $5 billion in revenue, and there are, for example, like 250 of those or 500 of those, right? Then if I'm talking to those 500 and I'm really booking calls and I'm making deals, then I would probably know that I'm going to make 7 figures or 8 figures out of that deal, right? But if so then when my SDRs are starting working with this channel, my sales execs are starting working with this, right? Then I would know that I'm ready to spend more money because I know that at the end of the day, this is the content that I'm looking for generating, right? When you think of other channels, you cannot achieve the same level of predictability with your ideal customer profile, right? Because very often you don't know who would register on the website, right, the next day. Like you just don't know. It's like a gamble, right? But with the outbound, every call that you make, you always know what kind of company I want to dial into, right? What kind of person I'm gonna have on my meeting, what that person title is, what the company is, how much money they're making, so that you know who you're going after, right? Yeah, and then there are a few others here. Predictable deal size, obviously, guys, very easy here, right? I've mentioned this. I know how much money I would generate as a result of the deal that I am close from these appointments. Predictable sales budget spend, already mentioned that a few minutes ago, right? I really can know how much money I'm spending on my BDR, on my SDR, on my tools, how much money I'm spending on my sales exec salary for this, and then what is my expectation, right? And then predictable short-term ROI. This is also very important, and I wanted to spend a minute talking about this. When I started the business, and generally when you start a company or run a product, you really are caring only about the acquisition and then client delivery. That's are the two only things that you care about, right? And very often, because you really wanted to make a difference, create value for the client, you always focus on the delivery, so that you don't have time for the acquisition, right? So you don't have time building up the pipelines and so on and so forth, right? And when you have a marketing team or a sales team, right, and you need to get leads, you obviously can increase your advertising budget or have an advertising budget, but we all know how expensive clicks are these days, or CPMs are these days, right? They just, I mean, I think that my team done like a recent campaign with ads, and a click from Google was like $150 or $200, and that was the cheapest we can find. So that's very expensive, right? And when I think of organic traffic or social or SEO, right, or content strategy, well, it's going to take me a year or 2 years or 3 years so I can generate enough leads for my sales team out of those channels. So when you think of the outbound, well, if I hit 100 inboxes and I get talking with 10 people and I can get 8 appointments, I probably can convert 1 or 2, right? If I have a product or service that is in demand, right? So it's really about, and then I can find those 100 people, within a day or 2 days, or I can purchase a database or have someone from the researchers to be able to kind of scrape the list for me or whatever, right? So the point is that really I don't need to wait for a year to get those appointments booked or get those leads generated, right? Because that shows that the short term. You always need to invest in your marketing. You always need to, to play a long game and long ball for sure, right? But really starting with the outbound and having the outbound component in play is very important here, just because it's gonna help you to generate those short-term results, right? Like within really like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, so on and so forth. And then easy to set up, and then easy to outsource with acquisition partner. Easy to set up. Again, you really don't need to have marketing team, content team, designers, sort of like you really need to SEO specialists, set up campaigns with ads or whatever. That takes month, right? Have a nice website, right? That convert, that is mobile responsive, right? All of these things you definitely can have that, right? But for the outbound to be effective, right, you really need to have a very nice list or a database, a good page or a message, right? A BDR, an SDR that can hit the phone or hit an inbox or send messages and book those appointments and generate interest, right? And then you can have an SE that knows what he or she is doing with, and then can convert those, and then several tools for the automation if you need those. If not, then you can do less work manually. But that's kind of it, right? And you can really generate those interests and generate those short-term results. And then why it's easy to outsource this with acquisition partner. I'll gonna have Brian answering this, I think, because that's something that we are facing on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, why do you need to outsource or outbound with a partner, or easy to outsource?
Yeah, and this might contradict a little bit of that last step, only because I think that as we continue just selling in general, I think that the market is getting more intelligent, and I think that it is really required to be at the leading edge of how to generate interest and how to get those appointments set up. But the reason that outbound is easy to set up with an acquisition partner is because you have someone who is focused solely on generating outbound appointments. That's the only thing that they do. And so they're a marketing team that's compiling messages for you, that's looking at the market in terms of who you're targeting within your ICP. They have a plethora of experience on what's going to generate qualified appointments for you. And so it's kind of a nice, if you have the ability, if you have the budget, it's a nice luxury to have a team of people that are solely focused on the outbound channel, where you can just kind of leave it and forget it. You can align with them on your key values, your key principles, your value proposition, the clients that you'd like to target, and then you could spend your time helping with business strategy. You could spend your time focusing on other areas of your business, opposed to spinning your wheels to try to figure out the beauty of a subject line or the magic that you have to put in terms of content. What do I need to do to make sure that my message fits on an iPhone screen and that it's generating the reply rate that I really want? You can entrust that to a partner who does just that, and so they can take their best practices and put them to work with you, kind of customizing an approach based on your value prop to generate qualified appointments for you. So now your time is spent actually taking those prospects through your sales journey. So it's it's different for me now, especially as an SE, where I can take those conversations and be more consultative, and I can spend my time doing prep to understand the business that I'm going to be talking to, versus really scratching and clawing to identify the businesses, to do the outreach myself, and then to also try to stay in front of them while I also have a pipeline that I'm trying to nurture and to take through our sales journey and to get to close. And so it just kind of frees that spot up for you, so you can focus on closing and kind of taking them to close versus doing it yourself.
And just to add to this, really, because very often for the BDR and SDR role, right, if you're not doing cold calling, you don't necessarily need to be even talking to a client, right? So really, because you're not actually like with outbound, when you do that, for example, by email or LinkedIn or through other digital channels, right? You really is not in the front of the sales in terms of closing that client or taking risk for ruining a brand, or not vetting the client or over promising and then under delivering, right? So you really are just kind of generating interest, kind of probing to making sure that this is the right customer for us, right? They might be, do they have an intent? Do they know about my product or service? Are they the right people to talk to? And that's kind of it, right? So because of this, you really can have someone who doesn't have maybe that much industry experience, maybe doesn't have the right lingo, right, to be able to do that for you. If you even can have or cut costs, or you can decrease the overhead for this, right? But then kind of generate the same results, basically. All right, so the next one would be typical touch points of a successful outbound sales operation. Really, when you think of that first slide that I've showed, right, where we've talked about the length of the process to get to from point A to the sale, right? Then it's going to take us between 10 to 20 sales stages to be able to do that, right? What are those sales stages are, right? Should I be just sending emails or hitting the phone? That very often sales execs hate, right? When you really kind of call the customer in the morning, afternoon, in the evening, and just kind of being annoying there, right? So what we've done there, we just kind of gave like a snapshot of what that funnel could look like, or that sequence of steps might look like for you guys to take a look at. And then you can either take this and then utilize that, or you can customize it, you can change, you can cut a few steps off, you can add a few steps off, right? Really, I just want you to understand the logic behind it, right? So that you would know what is that I might expect from my journey to be able to get someone on that call from the outbound channel and then actually move them to closing, okay? So obviously the first step would be to send a demo follow-up, right? So I get my, so my SDR or my BDR stood up an appointment. I went on to that appointment. I've pitched, the appointment went well. I did a demo, right? I finished the call. Now what's next for me? How I can move them to closing, right? So I send that initial follow-up, right? And some of our recommendations here, right? Within a few hours after demo, send a follow-up, right? Really don't wait the next day. Really don't wait the day after. Set up something for yourself, like a HubSpot reminder or like the automatic follow-up after call, but send that follow-up within the first few hours. The sooner you send that follow-up, the better, right? And then when you talk with a client, and I've learned that if you folks here know a company Domo, they are that enterprise a seller of like analytics tools and data and customizable dashboard. I think they're like somewhere in that 25 to $50 billion revenue per annum, somewhere there. But they have a very, very nice sales team. So what they do, they always sort of like take notes during the process in terms of like really what the customer needs are, what the pain points are, what they learned. And then when they send a follow-up, they highlight those needs and then how their software can solve those needs for them. So they really addressing those needs right off the bat, right when they send that follow-up, so that when the customer opens up the email, he or she realized that, hey, here's what I've discussed with Brian, right? Here what the needs are. And then, oh yeah, this is how their product can solve those needs for us. So really not being generic there, and customizable every follow-up is important there, right? And then you provide collaterals, right, to that email. So you've put as a reference case studies, testimonials, right, your deck, anything that might be relevant for the client to make the right choice for that, right? Don't be shy and just send nothing, right? Really send the information that would make or stand you out from the competitors, right? And then you always have your next step identified, always, so that either during the call, and obviously we would recommend doing that, set up next steps or next action after call, right? But if you can, during the call, but if you cannot do that, then set up or mention what the next steps are. Never leave the client hanging in terms of, hey, thanks for your time, best Michael, right? You really wanted to know, here's the next step for us, right? Here's what we're going to do next. Here's what I expect from you, right? So you always know what's next for us. And then as the next step, right? For example, if you have a pilot offer, what we mentioned, like a foot in the door offer, right? Really highlight the importance of that pilot and the importance of generating that short-term value for the client, right? So for example, when we think of, the Belkins speech, for example, right? We really, when we create those 20 test leads, we put a questionnaire in front of the clients and say, hey, please fill out this questionnaire, give us 2 days. We're going to get back to you with those 20 leads so that your team can utilize and move something to closing, right? So that for the client, it really going to take that 15 minutes to fill that questionnaire out, but then that's going to create some value down the road. And that's the next step, right? And then in 2-3 days, typically you can follow up with the email, right? About sort of like follow up to the next step that you highlighted in the first email, or only now bringing on that pilot offer or that sort of like foot in the door offer, either or. But you really need to have a strong follow up there to be able to keep their attention in order, right? Then next day you do another follow up, and then here you can send a LinkedIn connection request, right? Or for example, and this is something that also very important to mention here. Don't be one channel SC, right? Try to be like omni-channel one. So if you can hit someone up on LinkedIn, if you can connect with them, if you can be human and like several posts that you enjoy, really go through the history, right? And really care that you're not here about a sale, but about the relationship building, that's going to make a ton of difference. And then you're going to put your name and your face in front of the client for a few extra times, really nurturing that opportunity, right? So one of those follow-ups might be not sending email, not calling, but actually engaging with several posts, right? Leaving a comment, right? Hitting that connection request button there, okay? And then we're gonna have 4 and 5 steps can be making a sequence the day 8, right? So, and by the way, you can make a screenshot here, or you can, I'll send you the recording so you can save then this, so we can not kind of go through all of this. But basically, step 4, just really follow up on that value prop around a free trial or a pilot, or create value through content, right? One of the great examples I was given when I was shooting my first season of the podcast for one of the sales leaders was that when the timing is right and the content that you follow up with really can make the difference, then there's a very nice chance that you're going to make a sale. So what I mean by that is, for example, I am an executive and I'm preparing for my annual board meeting sessions, right? And I am in the, I am in the HR space, right? So if I'm an SDR or a sales exec, right? And I follow up with a client with the report or the example of the report that client can use to prepare for that board meeting, then there could be a huge value for that client, right? So instead of just sending a generic content or generic follow-up, to really think about what kind of content might create a difference for that client, and share that content when you know that the timing is right there, or feel that the timing might be right. And if that content can create value for that client, that they would thank you for that content. and then they would remember you, so that the next time you follow up, you can have some next steps after this, right? So really not just sending generic link to a blog post or just generic case study, but something that they would care about, and that they can have that you can create value with, right? Step 6, craft a unique follow-up experience by highlighting the solution based on their needs in the email, right? So again, you have their needs during the first follow-up, take 1 or 2 of those needs and really highlight the importance of addressing those needs right now, right? For example, because of the seasonality of the business of the client has, or because of the things that are happening in the industry right now, but really highlighting the needs would also make a huge impact, instead of just generally follow-upping, hey, I haven't heard from you, let me know what you think, right? Step 7, LinkedIn message plus the email with content creating value. Again, something interesting there. Step 8, sign a prospect for your marketing distribution list for them to connect with your brand. Really, this is something that many SEs are not doing these days, right? If you have a marketing team and a marketing team has their own agenda, sometimes you forget to put the client in the distribution list, or just put them in the nurturing sequence there. So again, try to do that, and that's gonna make a difference as well, right? Step 9, give a call, send an email about the next steps. Again, try to be omni-channel there, right? Step 10, look up a few names to highlight and suggest to bring into the discussion, organize another demo. So here's what we mean here by this, right? So very often when you sell to businesses, right, there are multiple decision makers in the process, right? So you never know whether you need to talk to Brian or to me about making a sale to Belkins, right? So really, if you sell to Brian and you can mention my name and say, hey, why don't we bring Michael to the discussion, right? And make sure that he's on the same page with us about making this call, because you guys both are running the sales team there. And then this is something that would personalize the follow-up experience, and then kind of just, again, make the difference there, right? And sort of like put your name in front of the client one more time and really keep the ball rolling there. And then step 11, maybe you can give a quick call, ask where they are, and then last email before putting a contact on hold, right? Again, with the outbound there, I put the sequence of 10 steps. If I'm at my 10th step there and I see that there is no response from a client there and they really don't want to move forward with me there, then I'm putting them on hold and I'm moving them in my pipeline to need time or lost or whatever. But I never leave them hanging in my pipeline, because very often we know that when you go to your pipeline and it looks very good, right? You have a lot of deals in that pipeline, but then when someone asks you, hey, how many of them we can convert this month? Well, and there are some excuses there, right? So making sure that your pipeline is clean is very important there. And you can do that only once you have that very clear step-by-step follow-up process or follow-up sequence. And then when you finish the sequence and you have the task to move that to lost or need time, you go ahead and do that. Brian, anything to add to this, or are we moving on with another?
Yeah, I would just want to chime in. So obviously, if on that first call out on a demo call, you talk to them about their time frame and they tell you that they're a quarter out from getting budgets approved to make a decision. This is just more of a loose example for, if you're not sure what the time frame is necessarily, this is, there's no science around when to send an email, when you shouldn't, what kind, what exactly, but really this does prove to them that they're still on your mind, that you still care about them and their organization and their organization's goals, and that you are proactively making sure that you're sending them relevant content that demonstrates the value that you see in the potential partnership. So, I love that Michael put a couple of things in, you put a couple of things in here about just sending them valuable content, because, if there's something that occurs within their business, a press release that pops up through Quora or through another agency that you notice, and then you can build something around that just to show them that you're still in tune, you're still following their business, you still know what's going on, and you still see value in a partnership. And it definitely speaks volumes when you're customizing what you're sending them to be specific to them, their title, what they may be experiencing, whether it be they're going through an acquisition or a merger or whatever the case may be. But keep this as kind of like in the back of your head as just an example of how persistent with outbound sales you need to plan on being in order to convert them, because it just requires so much more effort and so much more work and personalization than a referral or an inbound.
Now we have 7 success factors, right, that would ensure that you're successful with closing outbound leads, right? So first one is very important. It's consistency, right? Because very often we're so excited about the very next call that we're going to have, and we're going to have so many calls as sales execs a day, right? Some people have 5 calls, 7, 10 calls a day, right? That you cannot physically consistently follow up with everyone, making sure that all the notes are clean, everything is logged in the CRM, right? Then consistency is very important here, because you are as successful as the consistency that you have before the other people or other SEs that you're competing with, right? So you really need to be, or try to be, very, very consistent with what you're doing there. And then clear step-by-step process that can be tested and optimized, right? If you are really just going everything at the same time, and you don't have a process, and you don't measure the process, and you cannot test and optimize it, right? Because you cannot build Rome within one day, right? Or Rome wasn't built with one day, right? So that's why if you want to be successful by kind of setting up your outbound channel and actually having the channel to be successful, you can do that in 1 month. Maybe you will spend a year doing this. Maybe you'll spend 2 years there, right? But the sooner you start, and the sooner you start putting in effort into creating the process, testing, optimizing, seeing what works, what doesn't work, then the sooner you're going to have success, right? And you need to have this channel to be successful, because this is the marketing channel that can generate results for your business, and you need to, and everyone can be successful with it if you put effort into this, right? And then the third one is diverse and rich content base with case studies, DAG, blog posts, and overall industry insights, right? Again, I've mentioned this, right? Having a landing page and not producing content and not putting money into your marketing wouldn't make you successful. Honestly, I mean, right now, we're spending thousands of dollars on our marketing, even though we have an outbound team that does and generates hundreds of calls for us every month. But because we have that content, we have case studies, we have decks, we have blog posts, we have very rich content base, we can utilize that for closing. We can utilize this to increase conversions and be successful. Without that part, the outbound part cannot be successful, right? Pilot offer, foot in the door offer, right? You really wanted to increase conversion, right? Not having this, that's okay. Like, many businesses are successful without having that offer. But having that offer will increase your chances and your conversion. So if you can think about your service or your product, and you can create that offer, then by creating that offer, you will automatically gonna increase your conversion, right? And then marketing team support, right? So you really need to invest in your marketing generally. You need to have webinars. You need to have nurturing campaigns set up. You need to have newsletters, right? You really need to have your marketing team behind your backs to be able to have this successfully. Just having a sales team and not investing in your marketing is not an option. You cannot build a successful outbound channel without also investing in your marketing. So marketing and outbound sales goes hand by hand at all times, right? Sales software setup, right? You really need to make sure that you have the right setup. You need to have your CRM in place. You need to have your data be locked. You need to have everything be clean, tracking, and so on and so forth. Because you can imagine that keeping track of 50 deals or 75 deals, that's fine. But when you have 500 deals in your pipeline, 700 deals in your pipeline, and you really need to compare notes, you really need to make sure that all the contacts have their name right, their emails right, their titles right, and track the progress there. And again, this is possible when you have that sort of like automation in place, right? And then don't be annoying, right? This is also very important. Very often when and again, I think that a lot of you guys experience this, and Brian, I think, can speak to this as well. Whenever I'm shopping for some software and I leave my phone number, oh my God, I receive 25 calls per day from a sales exec. 25 calls per day. So basically, I sometimes when I'm shopping for something, I would then I hate myself and want to change my phone number, just because those people are going to be calling me every day with no respect to my time, or that I'm on the meeting and I can take a call, right? So really, the cadence that I've mentioned there, make sure that when you design the cadence, think about the person position that you are selling to, and about their schedule, about their day-to-day. Did they go to the vacation? Do they have an end of the quarter? They're on the meeting, and so on and so forth. And be respectful. And because it's a very, very easy to be annoying. And when you're annoying, then you're not going to close the deal, right? Because then the other person or the client on the other end will just going to hate you. And then the bonus one from me here is really be consistent, because consistency is the success of sales team. If you're not consistent, your sales team cannot be successful. And with the referral channel or with the inbound, okay, well, I want to have a consistency, but because I really have just a few sales touches, then that's fine. But with the outbound, when you have a sequence of steps of 10 to 20 steps you need to take in the course of 6 to 12 months, if you're not consistent, you're losing the customer, and then the investment that you put in during the month one will be just lost to a win, right? So you really, by investing into that outbound and creating consistent process and following that process consistently over the course of the whole sales cycle for 12 months is a challenge. But if you learn how to do this, then you will be successful with this process, right? And then I know I'm running late here, so 1 minute, common mistakes that sales executives make to prevent them from closing outbound leads. They don't have patience. They really want to make that close within 1 month or 2 months or within the same sales cycle as the referral. You cannot do that. It's really going to take you more push to close, right? They don't track their metrics, right? They just take calls, they talk, and then they don't know metrics. So they really need to track metrics. They aren't consistent over the long period of time. Again, it's going to take you 6 months or 12 months or longer than usual to close this. So hang on there, right? And be consistent about the time that you're going to have closing this. Don't have a clear structure, value prop with measurable deliverables and timelines. Again, you need to go to your drawing board and you need to really work on your value prop to make sure that it's clear, it's measurable, it's compelling, and it's straight and it's to the point, right? Don't know client needs and industry insights, competitors, right? So it means that when you're closing outbound, you need to be a pro and you need to really know client company in terms of what their pain points are. You need to actually guess, or you need to actually know what client's going to answer you before they actually answer you, right? Because you need to really know the answer right away, and that answer need to be damn good, right? You cannot have a not clear answer. So every time my client asks me, or I would ask them something and they give me the answer, I will give them a metric. I will give them the number, right? Because they would know that I know, so that I'm not just going in there and just want to sell them. I really wanted to help them to be more successful. And then they don't optimize their workflow, right? So they don't have they don't test, they don't optimize, they don't have a process in place, right? I think that we're gonna skip talking about the outbound sales strategies because we don't have time, and I really don't want you guys to spend more than an hour on this because you probably have other calls in place. So what I'll do, we're gonna email you this, and I would ask you guys to really, if you want to get a few examples of what kind of sales strategies might work for you guys when you do outbound, then go through those few last slides and read through the industry case study based outbound process, competitor based outbound process, pilot based outbound process, and then the research process that you need to do before the call to make sure that it's successful. Okay, so I'm going into questions now. Okay, guys. So the questions here are, and I'm going from, let me start here from this top here. Okay. Is that true that 90% of an outbound success is about choosing right ICP? What is the key to create the right ICP? Thank you, Alex. Brian, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would say that the being able to create the right ICP is very important. It probably is upwards of 85 to 90% of your ability to be successful. I know that a lot of folks would look at, or used to look at, the idea of compiling an ICP for your customers as like something that only Fortune 500 companies did, and they were just going to create a product and then just see who would come for it or who would be interested in their product. But as far as the keys to creating an ICP, it all depends on where you're at as far as your business. I would say the first thing is just to follow your gut. Look at your current customers, look at your best relationships that you would love to clone and replicate. Involve other departments within your company to come up with what that Goldilocks list of customers looks like, and then try to identify common denominators within them, whether it be geographics, firmographics, technographics, anything that you can find specifically to align those best relationships, and then help you kind of create a profile to replicate them, and then to find other businesses that may fit within them. Ask your current customers, talk to them and find out, hey, what is it that makes you choose us over our competition? Get the answers from their questions, and then take that information and be on the lookout for other businesses that you think you would be able to present the same type of value for. And I think that will help you and kind of get you on your way to identifying an ICP and finding businesses that you would be able to solve the similar problems for and create similar relationships for.
Ada asked here, is this typical touch points after demo part of your service? No, actually, as we mentioned right during that the session, that you really need to have that acquisition part or the closing part as your IP inside your organization. So it's very difficult to outsource or to have a partner closing or follow-upping after deals on your behalf, because it's about the relationship building. It's not about just the hard sell, right? Mark asked here that 2-3 days seems very short due to a typical workload of our customers. Mark, maybe that is the case for you guys, and I think that that's the case for many companies, right? The point that I was making about the 2-3 days after the initial call is that you really need to make sure that you are staying in touch with the client. You don't necessarily need to be that aggressive. You can really just send them some value. You can send some info that is interesting. You can follow up on the discussion. You can bring up some customer names, some case studies, right, that might be relevant for them. If you were to sell to me, right, and you're selling me a software, and you would say, hey, Michael, I have this case study that a company in your industry, how they utilize the software that we want to sign you guys on. Here is the case studies. I would definitely want to see how other companies are utilizing this case study in my industry, because I want to make sure that I'm as successful they are or the more successful, right? That's why it's really about just making sure that you can stay in touch with them as regularly as you can, because if you are kind of, if they're pulled away, or if you are not popping up on their radar for 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, you're gone, right? That's it. They're gonna forget about you, and then they're not gonna prioritize your project, and they're gonna have a lot of other priorities going on. There will be other sales execs that are gonna be doing the same, right? Then Alex, Alex asked, what can be taken as a good conversion rate in LinkedIn outreach to connect to call to sale? That's a good question. I think like 1%, Brian, what do you think? Like 1% conversion to appointment is a good ratio, 1-2%, yeah?
I think from a cold outreach standpoint, that's probably what you should expect. But also, I think there's some variables that maybe could impact that. I'm sure there's a range probably. What does your LinkedIn profile look like? How present are you? What are your posts? What is the content that you're sharing? Are you putting value and presenting value to your network? And so when you are prospecting, that folks can do some looking up of you and see kind of what your presence is like, what your fellowship is like, and followership is like. I think those are all things that will probably bring that conversion up. But yeah, I think just from a general perspective, probably right around 1%.
Yeah, to connect, Alex, to connect might be, I think we've seen that 20% is a very good conversion. So from the LinkedIn connection request sent to connected. But I mean, we've seen 15%, it's fine, right? I mean, guys, right? LinkedIn did this thing where they cut the number of connection requests that you can send per week. So now you're at about 100 or something. So it takes, it's going to take more time now to make more sales through LinkedIn. And then to sale, probably 15% is a good conversion from an appointment to sale when you think of the outbound channel. Veronica asked here, the world now is about soft sales. Don't think that your touch points are too aggressive. You know what, Veronica, that's a good point as well. But I mean, again, with outbound, no one expects you to sort of like no one expects your email or your call from them, right? So you need to have a very clear, very to the point and a bit more aggressive offer, right? Customer always can say no. That's why, but then you're looking for those that are going to say yes, right? And it's still going to be a sort of like a research-based buying process. So they're still going to make a research. They're still going to go and check out your reviews, right? They're still going to want the content. They want the experience. It's just the entry point will be a bit faster with them and it'd be more aggressive. So it's not about the sales process to be more aggressive. It's about the entry point to be more clear and more aggressive, and also just leading the customer with the next steps more often there. Okay. Thanks for the question though, Veronica. Levant here asked, if you're at the beginning of your business and you don't have real case studies or customer feedbacks, do you create fake ones? That's a good one. You know what? I think that when I remember when I started the business back in 2015, 2016, right? And we didn't have case studies. You really wanted to finish a project for one of the friends or someone from the network for free to get that case study or get that, right? So, because again, it's not about making money right now, it's about making more money later, right? So if you can have or finish one free project or two free projects and you can really spend your resources on this, then later on, these case studies you can monetize those case studies, right? And then if you can have someone in your network that you can finish this project to, cool. If not, then you can go and again, you can do some outbound and you can try to make the first sale. Your conversion will be much lower, but after that first sale, you really get that client, you really focus on creating value for that client. And then later on, you always kind of capitalize on that first case studies that you have. But I think like faking case studies is bad, right? It's like, it's something that then later on might not pay off for you. All right, so what if we are talking about industry where so long sales cycle are impossible? For example, design service with average cost 500 USD for one purchase. When Brian and I were thinking of that outbound process, you always need to make sure that your unit economy is in place. So it means that you cannot have your BDR, you can't have your sales execs, you cannot create this channel if you don't have budgets for this. And for you to have budgets, you need to make enough money to cover the budget and have the ROI. That's why if your service or your product costs $200 or $500 per purchase, then you need to have a self-serve product, right? Because you don't have enough budgets for the sales team with $200 or something, right? Especially when you start. So you really need to make sure how the entering or visiting and signing up for something and making the purchase can be seamless on the website, right?
I would encourage you to look at your model and see if there's a way you could build in a retainer model or a subscription model if you're doing design services, something to that effect that could make the relationship a little more stickier and then also bring in more revenue for you on the front end when you do sign a contract.
Yeah. All right. So we have one more question from Paola here. How do you overcome? We already have a service provider that we are happy with. Ryan, you want to take this one?
I just had this question come up actually within our outbound team. They reached out to me and said, hey, what happens if somebody says that they're already working with someone? And I said, well, I think that you acknowledge that they're already working with someone and that you think that that's great because they see the value in the service that you're providing. And just let them know that, hey, if now's not the right time, would it be okay if I follow up with you in a couple of months and see how that relationship has been going? It might make more sense for us to talk further on down the road. Or if there's something that you feel like you could be doing that would be getting more from the service, let me know and we'll set up a quick call for you. But obviously be really respectful if they're putting you off. We actually did book one today with that type of response. Just acknowledge that it's great that they have somebody because that means they see the value. We might be able to create some additional uplift with what they're currently doing. Or if not, let's check in with you in a couple of months if it's all right.
All right, guys, we are out of time. I really appreciate you all joining us today for this webinar. As I've said, recording will be available. It will be sent to your email addresses, the one that you use for the registration, okay? We're also gonna attach slides of this so that you guys can review them and take some notes and maybe utilize some of those learnings for your teams, okay? Brian, I appreciate you joining me today for this as well. I hope you all guys enjoyed and had fun because I had so much fun here. And I'm sorry that we probably need to book an hour, 2 hours for this, right? Just because there's so much to talk to. So stay tuned for the second part then and then follow up with us when you have any questions. Me, Brian, and the sales gang will try to answer those questions and provide you with all the relevant information. All right. And then I don't have Hugo around. He went somewhere just to run away with other doggies in the office. So yeah, but if you want to see more of Hugo, go to our About Us page. There are some photos of him on our Instagram as well. All right. So you can sign up on Instagram for Hugo. Okay, guys. Okay, Brian, thanks. Take care, guys.